Hi, I'm BigBooty17, and this farm is now one of the fastest ways to gather redstone in Minecraft. With the release of Minecraft patch 1.21, Mojang has significantly increased the redstone drop rate from witches. This is possibly to make up for the loss of stacking raid farms, or maybe as a sneaky way to slip wet pistons into the game. This buff results in a more than 10-fold increase in redstone drop per witch. Witch farms in this patch now outperform past stacking raid farms in redstone production, while being much simpler to build and far less laggy. With an output of about 8,300 redstone dust per hour, they easily surpass older raid farms like ENX04's, which maxed out at around 5,300 dust, and was often less due to the strain on lower end servers. Mojang has essentially ended stacking raid farms with changes that feel quick and targeted, such as the 30-second Bad Omen cooldown and the subsequent 1.21.2 update, which even disrupted non-stacking raid farms by altering wave spawning behavior. Without scuffed methods like using multiple players, these raid farms simply can't compete with the redstone production efficiency of a well-optimized witch farm. The design I'm about to explain and demonstrate has been optimized for simplicity while still delivering high rates. It's crafted with looting in mind, focusing on a single witch hut design, and does not really benefit from a perimeter. By leveraging some niche mob despawning mechanics, this farm is not only fast, but also remains within a single dimension, making it a viable choice for multiplayer servers. Witch huts have a small bounding box where only witches can spawn, so the key to better rates is to clear these spaces quickly. To achieve this, we can use timed shifting floors that swiftly eject witches from the spawning area. This farm is one-dimensional and doesn't benefit from being two-dimensional since it operates far below the mob cap. We can prevent random mob despawning by pre-damaging the witches once to reset their despawn timer. This makes it more multiplayer friendly because we can avoid cases where they despawn in other dimensions. At this point, witch huts have been farmed for over a decade, so let's take a moment and see how our design compares with others in this space. I'll focus on designs that have been updated or promoted as working in 1.21 to keep things relevant. We'll be examining three modern approaches, one by RaiseWorks, another by RSDKH, and a max potential concept by 2No2Name. I'll be evaluating each and my design based on these criteria and justify it. At some level, this will be subjective, but you should be able to come to your own conclusions based on what I present. As a baseline, keep in mind that finding a witch hut and spawn-proofing the surrounded area are necessary steps for every design. Given the effort involved with this, it's worth investing in a high-quality witch farm that delivers solid results. RaiseWorks' design stands out as likely the only Zoglin-powered farm in existence. Unfortunately, this uniqueness comes at a cost, and it doesn't make the best use of the limited spawning spaces in a witch hut. The large Zoglin hitboxes frequently cause spawn failures, and the witches tend to have a relatively long lifetime in the farm. For the build effort, I'll rate this an 8 out of 10. The actual block placing is straightforward and manageable, with no redstone involved. However, this simplicity comes at the expense of lower rates and a notably high logistical cost. There is a lot of logistical headache with this farm. You'll need to transport 6 hoglins and position them across each layer. If your witch hut is far from a crimson forest, then it's even worse. The redstone you'd skip isn't worth this headache. Moving these hostile mobs from the nether just isn't worth it. I'll rate this 2 out of 10. The rates of this farm suffer due to the large Zoglin hitboxes blocking the already limited spawning spaces. Additionally, Zoglins can only target one witch at a time and take a few seconds to switch to the next, leading to a longer witch lifetime. With looting, this farm yields about 6,400 redstone per hour. Considering the effort required to build this, it's quite poor, achieving only 73% efficiency. Its strongest point is really just its novelty. For the RSDKH design, the shifting floor approach aims to maximize spawning spaces by only moving sections of the floor where the witches are standing. It uses partial detection and is clocked to prevent instances where a witch might not fall through, which could otherwise disrupt the farm's efficiency. Partially shifting the floor invalidates less spaces as the pistons are active, allowing for more spawns. For build effort, I would rate this a 6 out of 10. The redstone is a bit more complicated, but it shouldn't matter unless you're aiming to fully understand it. While this redstone setup adds to the build effort, it makes up for it with no real logistical issues, since the entire build is just placing blocks. However, the design does lose some logistical score due to this implementation being two-dimensional, which could be more effort to run on a populated multiplayer server due to despawn mechanics. The rates are nearly perfect, achieving 99.4% efficiency. If the look of this build doesn't intimidate you, I definitely recommend it. And don't forget to check the Discord where we archive designs like this. Although very impressive, this partially shifting floor design is not the limit of witch farms. 2No2Name has introduced a concept that's nearly as fast as instantly teleporting the witches away. By using Johnny Vindicator Patrol captains to manipulate the witch AI, you can force them to quickly leave the spawning spaces on their own, making this the fastest known layout for a witch hut. Because this farm relies entirely on the witch AI, the build effort is minimal, earning a 10 out of 10. The logistical cost of acquiring Vindicator Patrol captains does require some game knowledge, but it's simplified in 1.21 with Bad Omen now available in bottle form. For someone with a solid game plan, this could honestly be easier than transporting 6 hoglins. I'd rate the logistical cost at a 4 out of 10, and as for the rates, this concept achieves the maximum possible, so it must be 10 out of 10. Our farm targets a more casual audience, using simple redstone that serves multiple purposes while still focusing on high productivity. Given the effort to find and prepare a witch hut, this design balances an easy build with high output. As for the build, I tried to keep the redstone digestible and easy to place, lava casting where possible, and making use of relevant mechanics to maximize the spawns and lower the despawn rate. This is easier to build than the other shifting floor style farms, so I'll give myself an 8.5 out of 10. Logistically, you won't need to move any mobs, and this is a single dimension farm, so I'll give this a 10 out of 10 there. Not to say there aren't logistical considerations, like lighting up the surrounding area and finding the hut, but these are things shared by all witch farm designs. As for the rates, we do take a step down from the partial shifting floor designs and get 8,280 redstone per hour instead of 8,650. I think this 5% difference is acceptable given the build and logistical considerations. For players looking to make an uncomplicated yet efficient farm, this is the right choice. As RSDKH put it, this is a good and cheap witch farm with impressive rates for this kind of design. As far as I'm aware, there is no reliable method to find a swamp biome other than pure exploration. However, if you have access to your world seed, you can use tools like chunkbase or the locate command to easily locate a witch hut. If you've enjoyed the video so far, subscribing is the best way to support me and stay up to date with my content, especially since I don't upload full time. You'll also be the first to know when I release my video on a 76,000 log per hour dark oak farm, which also works with the new pale oak trees. I'm also planning on an updated tutorial for my cobblestone farm that relied on now patched string mechanics. Here are the materials you'll need for this farm. We'll be working within the structure's bounding box, which means placing blocks in very specific locations for witches to spawn. It's important to follow along closely as I show you where to place everything, how to AFK, and how to spawn-proof the area. As always, check the video description for any updates or changes to the farm. I've listed 3 water buckets here, even though we use more than 3 water sources throughout the entire build. However, you will never need more than 3 at a time. Whenever you find a break, just take a moment to refill your buckets. We will be creating 2 bubble columns using lava casting. The easiest way to turn the water into source blocks is with kelp and bone meal, but if you prefer, you can use kelp and torches as demonstrated in this video. Additionally, we'll temporarily pillar up 126 blocks. I recommend using a gravity block like sand, which I will be using in the tutorial, or scaffolding because it's easier to remove once you're finished with it. Once you've found your witch hut, we'll need to determine the bounding box and take note of a few key coordinates. In patch 1.21, witch huts generate in the northwest corner of a chunk, and you can use F3 and G to show the chunk borders to help locate the bounding box. I'll walk you through how to find it without relying on chunk borders, since this method could change if Mojang decides to update the generation mechanic. The witch hut's bounding box is a 9x7 area. After locating the hut, stand on the roof and place blocks at each corner. Then find the side with the hut entrance or porch and extend those corners by 1 block. These blocks will serve as reference points for our topmost spawning platform and should be positioned to enclose a 9x7 area. To mark out the 2 other platforms, start by placing 3 blocks, then breaking 2 of them, leaving a 2-block gap. On the remaining block, place 3 more blocks and break 2 again. You should now have 3 layers separated by a 2-block gap. From here, we can remove the rest of the witch hut. and mark out the other corners of the platforms. Next, we'll mark out a 9x9 area for the inner square, which is surrounded by a 10x10 outer boundary around the bottom spawning layer. Starting from one corner of the bounding box, place 9 blocks, skipping the corners as you go, until you've completed your 9x9 inner square. Next, we'll clear a 3-block high area below the platform within the 9x9 square we just marked out. Depending on your witch hut's location, you may need to drain water and build retaining walls to properly fit this 9x3x9 area. Place water at the points where the corners of the spawning platform and 9x9 square meet. This will help you identify the center of the square. From the center, dig 1 block lower and into the wall to create a 1x3x3 space. Then remove the center block from the wall behind this square. Remove the floor of this section and place in order a magma block, blue ice, and then soul sand. Now place 3 signs above the blue ice, then turn and remove the floor where the water doesn't reach. From here, remove the corners where the water ends to create a flow that directs into the chamber we just created. Press F3 and take note of your Y coordinate. This is how we're going to determine the height for our killing chamber. Round your Y value up to the nearest whole number, then add 127 to it. That'll be the height that we will pillar up to shortly. If this step is done incorrectly, you could end up with 0 witches to kill. Look straight up and return to the surface. We'll be digging out 2 adjacent plus signs in the ground to keep lava from spilling out. And dig the second plus sign opposite the porch side of the hut. From the edge of the cross and center of the square, pillar up to the height you calculated earlier. From this height, bridge out 2 blocks, then place 3 more blocks extending towards the second cross. Break the blocks, leaving only the corners, then place 2 lava buckets. It should take just over 3 minutes for the lava to reach our crosses, though it may take longer if your server is laggy. Remove both lava sources and place water as soon as you see the edges of the blocks. It's better to be late than early with this timing. Remove the water and blocks to make this section flush. Then remove the center blocks to place 2 water buckets. Jump into the pit to place kelp, then use bone meal to grow it. This bubble column will move witches to the kill chamber, while the other column, which we will kelp shortly, provides access to the farm and serves as vertical wiring for our shifting floors. Break this kelp and return to ground level. Break these 2 blocks to place a door, then soul sand, then kelp the water column. Even if you don't plan on using this column for access, it's necessary for the wiring. The bubble column state acts as a global clock to synchronize our shifting floors. Break the kelp and take the bubble column to the top, where we will finish our killing chamber. At the top, block the witch column with a solid block, and place another block above to prevent phantom spawns. Then place an armor stand. This will allow us to attack the witches by hitting it with a sword. Descend 4 blocks on your scaffolding and bridge over to the other side. By not placing storage directly above the hut, we increase spawn rates. This works on the same principle as building Enderman farms as low as possible to maximize efficiency. Place 2 double chests with hoppers pointing into them. I'll cover how to expand the storage in a later section. Return to the top using ladders and build retaining walls. Place a stair block above the chest to keep them accessible. Then you can use normal blocks for the other walls. Crouch to remove this block and place a trapdoor, then remove the top water source. Flip the trapdoor to break the below block to create a water flow. The trapdoor keeps EXP accessible, while the water stream keeps the storage system modular and expandable. Drop back down to ground level and remove your scaffolding. Next, we'll build the spawning platforms, alternating between rows of solid blocks and soul sand. The difference in height between the soul sand and solid blocks, along with the trapdoors we'll place later, causes mobs to fall through. This concept, known as shifting floors, even works on players. Be sure to replace these blocks with soul sand to match the pattern on the other layers. To the right of the water columns, remove the 6 blocks adjacent to the platform. Then remove 6 more blocks behind them. Place 6 pistons facing the platform in those spaces. Head towards the bubble columns and place a wall and observer facing it, powering a solid block. Run redstone dust behind the pistons over solid blocks. If there's dirt like in my case, it's fine as it's already a solid block. We'll replicate this piston return station for each layer. Start by pillaring up with a stair, followed by a solid block, then a wall. And crouch onto the wall to place solid blocks to place 6 pistons like the previous layer. Then place an observer facing the wall. Run dust to the observer, then crouch back to the platform to place your 6 pistons. Crouch again to the wall and pillar up using a stair, solid block, and wall to replicate the wiring, observer, and piston for this next layer. On the opposite side, remove part of our 9x9 outline to place solid blocks running behind pistons directly against the platform. And behind the pistons, run dust over the solid blocks. Similarly, pillar up with a stair followed by 2 solid blocks to recreate the piston and dust line on the remaining 2 layers. Once again, use a stair followed by 2 solid blocks to reach and set up the 3rd layer. I'll explain the purpose of the stairs later. Facing the pistons you just placed, install and flip up trapdoors over every block on each spawning platform. And we'll place trapdoors on each layer. In line with the dust and 9x9 outline, place a sticky piston to put an observer powering a repeater and connect it to the dust line. Place a block directly above the repeater and connect it to the second dust line as well. Now place an observer facing the bubble column, powering a solid block with redstone dust below it. Lead that dust into a repeater set at max delay, positioned to face the sticky piston. Place a dispenser facing the bubble column with an empty bucket inside of it as shown. Behind the dispenser, place a solid block followed by a copper bulb, then a comparator. Now, place 2 repeaters at max delay facing this solid block, then 2 adjacent repeaters facing the opposite direction, one at max delay and one at a 6 game tick delay, into a solid block and redstone torch. Place dust next to this solid block to complete the clock, and add a lever to turn the machine off. Take a moment to verify that the bottom 2 floors are properly pushing back and forth, then turn off the clock. Make your way to the 3rd layer using the same pattern, stair followed by 2 solid blocks, then another stair, and more solid blocks. Bridge over to the bubble column and quickly replace the cobblestone with an observer to prevent spillage, and run redstone dust to the pistons. Reactivate the clock to ensure the platforms move back and forth in sequence, starting from the top down. Fill in this row, leaving a 1 block gap between it and the spawning platform. For this next part, we'll be enclosing the spawning space to ensure the light level inside reaches 0. On the levels with trapdoors, we'll use stairs to allow for pack spawning, while any light blocking block can be used elsewhere. You may have seen this mechanic used in Enderman farms, where platforms are surrounded by leaves to increase the spawn rates. By using the same approach here, we can boost the rates of our farm as well. From here, surround the trapdoors with stairs, ensuring they're oriented in a way that prevents any light from passing through. As mentioned earlier, you can use any light blocking blocks on the levels where there are no trapdoors. And make sure to preserve the gaps between the pistons and spawning platforms that we intentionally created earlier. Repeat this process for the next layer. On the 3rd layer, place 1 set of stairs and blocks to create a 2 high area for witches to spawn. Then, fill in the roof with bottom slabs, covering the entire area, including the space above the walls we just placed. Take a moment to inspect the farm, ensuring that there's no spot where light can come through. Then, place slabs above the pistons and observers located on the right of the bubble columns. Align yourself with the observed walls on this side of the build, then pillar up using stairs to repeat the slabbing on the 2nd level. Use stairs again to pillar up to the 3rd level, and apply the slabs there as well. We will extend the 3rd piston level platform by 4 bottom slabs on all sides. This will allow the stairs we meticulously placed earlier to help increase spawn rates for our farm. This is our final step in the build. If you run into any issues, be sure to check out the video description for potential solutions. And if this tutorial helped you out, leaving a comment, subscribing, or liking the video not only supports me, but helps others discover the farm. And that completes our build. If you haven't already, make sure to torch the surrounding area to ensure mobs spawn inside the farm. At nighttime, you can verify your spawn proofing by standing at the top of the farm and pressing F3 and B to highlight any hostile mobs. Using a spyglass or lowering your FOV can help you accurately identify which mob you're looking at. Additionally, if you have access to the mini HUD mod, you can place a despawn spear in light level renderer to see the exact areas that need spawn proofing. Since this farm operates well below the mob cap, in my experience, allowing a few slimes to spawn doesn't affect the farm's performance at all. To use the farm, simply perform sweeping attacks on the armor stand. It's recommended you have a sword with sharpness and sweeping edge, but even without these, you can still just occasionally hit the armor stand to apply looting damage as the witches die from cramming. The speed or amount of damage dealt to witches has no effect on the drops. The only factor that matters here is whether you apply looting or not. If this build and tutorial helped you, commenting, subscribing, and liking the video helps both me and others get recommended this farm. If you're looking to expand the storage system, we have that also archived in the Discord, along with many other survival-friendly designs. Thanks again, and I hope that you come back for more of the farms and videos I have planned.